Hello, everyone. Welcome to How to Write Stories. My name is Charles Theodore Monk. If you guys can hear me, please say hello or hi. Yes, I can in the chat. That way I know that everyone can hear me. So like I said, if you guys can hear me, just please let me know. Because obviously it would be kind of pointless if I ran through this whole presentation without you guys being able to hear from me. So if anyone can hear me, please say something in the chat. That way I can know you guys can hear what I am saying. Hello, I see someone's already done it. Thank you for that. Guys, keep it coming. Hello, hello, hello. Awesome, awesome. Hi, Joanna. Nice to see you. Glad that you guys are able to make it into this presentation. So I will give about 20 more seconds if anybody else would wish to, make say hello or say anything into the chat. Please go ahead. That way we can sort of understand make sure you guys can understand what I am saying. All right. Thank you guys so much for doing that. So let me give a little quick background on what we will discuss today. So from the title, you guys can probably guess we will be talking about how to write stories. So whether that is a essay for school, whether you just want to write a story in your free time. So we are going to discuss the best ways to write a story, all right? And we will go on for about 30 minutes. I want to be mindful of your time, and I will do my best to get you guys out of here at the 30-minute mark. If you have any questions, please save them till the end, and I will do my best to answer any question that you guys may have for me. I am thankful that you guys are coming and doing this little journey with me, and I hope that you guys will be able to take something and learn from this experience. So let's get started. So we are going to be talking about 5 major steps in the writing process. The first one is to plan, and then we'll go to write, rewrite, edit, and publish. So what we will do in this presentation is I'm going to break it down by the steps. So we are going to start off by talking about planning and move on. We are going to build our base on how to write, and then we will increase it and do our best to make sure that our writing is the best that we can do. All right, so let's get into the first step, which is planning. So we'll talk about how to plan. So the first major thing to do when you are in the how to plan process is to get ideas. All right, so do your research. Make sure you do your research. All right, you get your books, right? You have your magazines, you have your stories, you have the internet. The internet has so many different resources today that provide us with so much more information that we did not have 20, 30 years ago, right? Everything is so accessible. So make sure you get good ideas and get quality ideas for your story. And also the second is to make sure to not be quick. So don't be quick when you are deciding what you would like to write about. In your own free time, I personally like writing. I would write maybe a story a little bit here and there, but don't be quick when you decide what you want to make your story about. So go and do your research, right? Get your ideas. Maybe you want to write a story about, let's say a historical figure. Don't be so set on only writing about one person because you might learn a whole bunch of new things about someone that you were not expecting, right? And like I said, explore your options. Make sure you are open-minded to changing your plan, right? Planning is so important because if you do not have a good plan into your stories, well, guess what? You don't have much of a goal, let's say, right? If you just go into your writing process without planning out what you want to do, you will have no train of thought. So make sure you will take your time, sit down, maybe even make a list, right? Make a list of, let's say, your top 3 or top 5 options you would like to write about, and then you can choose specific areas, and then you will pick the one you want to write about. So here's a quick example, all right? So for example, our topic is Greek mythology. So the Greek gods, the Greek history, and the Greek, just the Greek history in general, right? With their religion, with their heroes and all that. So if our topic is Greek mythology, we will take a look at the history, right? So we'll get our resources, we'll get our ideas. So we'll search up popular Greek mythologies, popular Greek myths, and take time and read through all the options you have. You don't want to rush into something and be and end up with a topic that you don't enjoy, that you are not interested in, right? So find what interests you, right? For example, maybe you are interested in you love romance. There are a lot of Greek myths that relate around romance. Maybe you like the action. There are so many different options with action. Maybe there's ones about different stories or different characters that you are already interested in. So find what interests you, because when you find what interests you, you can write about it for a long, long time, right? You don't have to be so stuck and kind of get bored with your writing and not enjoy what you are writing. So find what interests you. And the most important thing in the planning area is to pick something with plenty of material. You don't want to get something, for example, let's say you want to write something worth, let's say 5 pages, all right? And you get something that only can fill out 2 pages or 3 pages, right? You cannot hit your goal of what you want to hit. So pick something with plenty of material. That way, you can write a good amount and give the proper amount of information into a story. So maybe you find a story that is interesting, but sadly there is not much information on it, or there's maybe a character that maybe has no stories. Maybe he's mentioned only in one story. So therefore, you have to make sure what your goal is, right? Establish your goal and pick something with a good amount of material to reach that goal, right? So that is the first step, guys. Remember, we talked about planning. Planning is our basis when it comes down to writing stories. And now we are going to move on to the second area, which is the writing exercise. All right, not exercise, we should say, but the writing step, the writing stage. And there are three main areas to notice when you come down to the writing stage. So the first one is to simply write. You write what's on your mind, you write what interests you. It doesn't matter, right? Like it says, ignore your mistakes. And number two, it doesn't matter if you spelled something wrong. It doesn't matter if you let's say got off track and wrote something that wasn't important. You simply write. You write any idea that comes to your head and you write it down in your story, right? So for example, you, let's say, maybe you want to reach 500 words. Maybe you want to write a short story or a short summary of the adventures of, a certain historical character. Ignore your mistakes. Like I said, do your planning, get your information, and then write about it. Let's say, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to worry about your mistakes in the writing process. So the writing process is only the second stage. We have three more stages to improve our writing and improve our stories after that. So ignore your mistakes. And the third step is to simply write as much as possible. You don't have to have a limit. You write as much as you want. Maybe you don't want to write that much. Maybe you want to write a lot. Write as much as possible, because you will have the greatest amount of material possible to have a very, very good story, right? So we talked about our planning, which is where we get our ideas. And the second step is to write. And writing in this step, and the second step, is not to be perfect. Even if you make mistakes and notice those mistakes, just leave them and move on. There's a different stage where we will get to the whole point and the whole part, I guess you could say, about improving our writing. And that stage is the rewriting stage. So the rewriting stage is simply where so for example, you have your planning and you have your first draft, we could say, your first writing or your first part of that story, and this is where you will rewrite it. So a good writer strives for perfection. You want your story to be as good as possible. You don't want to write a mediocre story and not be satisfied with your work. You want to write a good story and you should strive for perfection. But however, in the rewriting stage, we do not fix our grammar and our mechanic errors. So if we find a misspelling, we do not focus on that yet. The things that we should ask ourselves in the rewriting stage is three questions. Is there unity? Is there coherence? And is there emphasis? So with unity and coherence, does our writing make sense? Is it done in chronological order? Is it done in the proper steps, right? For example, if I am writing a story about my day, so I wake up in the morning, I go get my coffee, get my breakfast, and then I work. And I'll work till 5 p.m., go to the gym. But if I make a story with my first draft, I say, I wake up in the morning at 5 p.m., I go to the gym. But before 5 p.m., I get my coffee as soon as I wake up, and then I work until 5 p.m. right? There's no unity or coherence in that story. So you have to make sure everything is in perfect chronological order so that your story makes sense, and make sure to have the proper emphasis. So if you are writing a story and you want to talk about, let's say, a love story, make sure you emphasize that you are writing about a love story. You don't want the reader thinking he is reading a comedy script or a action script while you want it to be a love story. So make sure you make it obvious and you make it clear what your emphasis is in your story. The reason you are writing the story, like what you want people to get and what you want people to understand. You want to make sure that there is proper emphasis in your story. All right. So we mentioned the first three steps. We talked about our planning, and then our first, as next stage, which was writing, and our rewriting stage. Right. So rewriting, we do not focus. Remember, we do not focus yet on our grammar and mechanic errors, but we want to make sure our story makes sense and it has the proper emphasis. So make sure in the rewriting stage, you rewrite your whole story, but you get the material you had in your first draft and you put it in your second draft, and make sure it has unity, make sure the story is in perfect chronological order, and that you have the correct emphasis. There was a quote by a very famous author, and he once said, I can't understand how anyone can write without rewriting everything over and over again. Right? He is saying he strives for perfection because he wants his story to be amazing and he wants his story to be so good. Right? Like I said, a good writer strives for perfection. So what? Maybe you have to have 5 drafts, 6 drafts. You want to make sure your story is as good as possible, right? So now we're going to move on to the fourth step or the fourth stage, and that is the editing stage. So the editing stage is simply to check sentences for correction, for clarity, and for effectiveness. So this is where you will check for your grammar errors. This is where you will make sure you check your spelling errors. This is where you check your mechanics, right? Make sure your spelling is right. Make sure your stories are right, and make sure everything you are doing is in the correct order. All right. So a good resource for editing is you have your dictionaries, you have people, you have a lot of other various topics that you could use to editing. And editing is probably the most crucial after planning, because this is where you makes or breaks your story. If your story is poorly written, if your story has a lot of grammar errors, sadly it will not be the most interesting for a lot of people, and a lot of people would sadly not enjoy it, right? So this is where you have to be the most careful. You read every word carefully, you read every sentence carefully, and this is where you fix all the grammar mistakes. Like I said, you check for corrections, you check for your correct spellings, and even if you are sort of on the edge, maybe you're like, okay, this does look right, make sure it is right. Unless you are 100% sure, you have to double check yourself. And the next one was clarity. Make sure everything is clear. Make sure your sentences make sense. You do not want to have a sentence that throws the reader off and makes them kind of wonder, why did I just read this? Why? Like, why? What was the whole purpose of it, right? And you want to check for your effectiveness. Does your writing emphasize properly, right? So in the last stage of rewriting, we focused on having a proper emphasis. Now, is our emphasis effective? Does what we emphasize correctly affect the reader, right? We've all known great stories where there's been amazing love stories, amazing action stories, amazing stories in general, and they are effective. So when you edit, you have to make sure your effectiveness is there. Because if you have no effectiveness in your writing, sadly, your writing will be passed on by a lot of different people and even by yourself. And always look for ways to improve your sentences. So what you think, okay, I'm doing really good. This is okay. Don't settle for okay. A good writer strives for perfection. Change it and improve it. Maybe you have to add some more words for it to make more sense. Maybe you have to take some words out for it to make more sense. But always look for ways to improve your sentences, all right? So we are about to go into a little exercise. We will practice our editing skills, all right? So keep an open mind, and if you guys want to get involved with that, go ahead and put that in the chat. This is going to be a very interesting exercise, if I do say so myself. So keep in mind what we've talked about so far. We talked about, we're on step 4 out of step 5. Our first step was our planning, our basis, and then it was our writing stage, where we write our ideas and we write down, let's say, our first draft of our story. And then we moved on to rewriting. This is where we check our unity, our coherence, and our emphasis. And we find the parts to remove or add or simply rearrange. And now we are onto the editing stage. This is where we check for correction, clarity, and effectiveness. So we check our spelling, we check our sentences, and we check if our story is effective, if it will affect our readers, all right? So here is a little example of editing. So our first sentence is incorrect. Our second sentence is the correct way to do it. So we will focus on the incorrect and why it is incorrect, all right? So the incorrect sentence says, I already did not do what you asked of me. That is a very jumbly sentence. It doesn't make much sense. It is not clear. There is no unity or coherence in that sentence. So the correct way to do it would be, I did not do what you asked me to do, right? So in our stages, right, in our incorrect sentence, we will leave that in our rewriting. We do not worry about our sentence structure just yet. And this is where in our editing, right, once we have our second or third draft, the draft we think is what we think is good, this is where we edit it. So we go through each sentence, making sure our sentences are good, and we change our errors and we check our corrections, right? So in the incorrect sentence, the reason it does not make sense is because there's just simply too much fancy wording in this sentence, right? Maybe you can think, oh, but it's saying, words like already and stuff like that. Don't worry. No, it's not correct. We have to make sure our sentences make sense and our sentences have unity. So, like it says, I already did not do what you asked of me. You can simply change that sentence into the correct version, which would be, I did not do what you asked me to do. Simply saying, I didn't do it. I'm sorry, I did not do what you asked me to do. It just makes so much more sense. It's a lot easier for the readers to understand. It's a lot easier for yourself when you're writing your story. So if you cross paths with a correct sentence, move on. Don't worry about editing it or adding or removing anything. But if your sentence, like the first one, which the incorrect sentence doesn't make much sense, there's a lot of gray area, it's not the best, you just move on and simply pass and fix it. You want to make sure in editing that you have correction, you have your clarity, and you have effective sentences and effective writing. Now, we are going to do a exercise where we are editing the errors in these sentences. So we will focus on the first sentence, all right? So, and then we'll move on to the second one. And I will break down the errors in these sentences. If you guys find any errors, put that in the chat, and I will be able to either congratulate you for doing it or correct you where you are wrong, right? Be willing to learn, and that's the whole point of why we're here, all right? So we'll focus on sentence number 1, where it says, in the history, it talks about the understanding of everything that the great kings had. All right, so this sentence doesn't make much sense. There's a lot of area, all right? So we will focus on, let's focus, like when it comes to editing, you want to focus on one thing at a time. So let's focus on our spelling. Are there any misspelled words in this sentence? All right, so let's read it one more time. In the history, it talks about. About is not a word. I think this person was trying to spell about. And about is correctly spelled A-B-O-U-T, right? So in the history, it talks about the understanding of everything that the great king had. All right, so there are no other misspelled words, right? So imagine that about is changed to about for visuals, visual points, all right, and visual area. So now we'll focus on our capitalization. Are there any words here that are capitalized wrong? So I already see one, and that is the word history. History should not be capitalized. There is no reason to capitalize. It is important in the sentence, but it is not the beginning of the sentence, so we do not need to capitalize it. So Now we can lowercase history. So it will say, in history, it talks about the understanding of everything that the great kings had. All right, so we have no more spelling errors. We have no more capitalization errors. Now we have to make the sentence correct. We have to correct and clarify our sentence and what we're trying to say. And the best way to fix this would be simply this. In history, it talks about how the great kings had a understanding of everything. See, our sentence flows so much better. We can even shorten it. If that's what you wanted to do, you can say, in history, great kings had a understanding of everything, right? Or they understood a lot of stuff, or a lot about everything, right? It's all about finding the best way for you to make your sentence clear and to make your sentence correct. All right. So we did exercise number 1. Now we'll move on to exercise number 2. All right. So like we said, I will read it and you guys will follow along. All right. It says, the gods that were Greek were numerous and all had roles that were specific to each god. All right. So is there any misspelled words in this one? So let's read it one more time. The gods that were Greek were numerous and all had roles that were specific to each god. No spelling errors. Now, are there any capitalization errors? And are there any things capitalized or lowercase that shouldn't be? All right. So the gods that were Greek. All right. So we'll pause first. The gods. The gods should be lowercase. All right. The gods, unless it specifies to one god, are all lowercase. So the gods that were Greek. Greek should be capitalized because that is a type of people, right? So the gods, lowercase gods that were capital Greek, were numerous and all had roles that were specific to each god. So we're going to lowercase the G in God again and have a lowercase god. And we can simply fix this sentence by saying the Greek gods all had specific roles. See, we jumbled so many words into like less than 10, right? Exactly. There. See, there are so many, though a sentence like this could sound sort of correct, we want our sentence to be as clear and as correct as possible. All right, so that was a little exercise. So see how to analyze our sentences and a good strategy on how to fix our sentences if they are sadly incorrect. All right, so now remember, we're going to stage 5, our last stage of our writing. All right, so we started off with our planning, our writing, our rewriting, and we just finished our editing. And now we were going to the final stage, which is publishing. So publish is the final stage. Publishing is the final stage. And this is the place where you have your writing. You think it's very, very good. You have your errors taken out. Everything seems good. And the best thing to do in the publishing stage is get a person or a group of people to read and get their feedback, whether that is positive feedback or negative feedback. All right, whether they say, oh, that's really good or that's really bad, you can fix it here. Get other people's opinions on your writing so that you can get a different perspective, right? These are going to be the people reading your story, right? These are the people that will be reading your essays. Maybe your teacher will read your essay. Maybe your family member will read the story that you wrote, right? So this is the stage in where you get feedback, whether that is positive or negative. And if you get any negative feedback, think about it. Does this feedback benefit my writing? Is this going to make it better or make it worse? So if you get feedback that will make your writing better, you improve, obviously, right? You want to get other people's opinion. But if the feedback you get won't improve your story, just ignore it, right? And after completing everything in the publishing stage, you are done. All right. But it is super important to keep an open mind in the publishing stage, right? If people read your story and they don't enjoy it, why? Maybe ask them the question, why don't you enjoy it? Or why do you think my essay was bad? And then you might have to scrap it and restart. But now that you have the feedback, you kind of get an idea of what other people will think about your writing and will think about the work that you have done, right? So it's simple. So we've talked about all 5 stages. We talked about our planning. This is where we get our ideas and plan out what we want to write. Writing is our first draft, our first time actually writing what we want to talk about. And then we rewrite it. We fix it, put it in chronological order, and improve in areas that are kind of not so good. And then we talk about editing. We fix our grammar errors and we make sure everything is correct and clear. and effective, right? And then the publishing stage is the last and final stage. This is where we get people's opinions and we work on their opinions and make sure our story everyone will enjoy it. We make sure that everyone will enjoy our story. All right. So those were all 5 stages, guys. And now we're going to move on to a little Q&A section. If you have any questions, put that in the chat. I will give about 30 seconds to 45 seconds for you. If you have any questions, think about it and ask me a question about maybe this presentation or something else. Any questions? Go ahead. If there is none, we will move on to the next part. We are about 4 minutes away from ending this presentation. It's been so good, but I will want to answer any questions you guys may have. All right, so go ahead and ask, and I will answer those questions. All right, I'll give about maybe 10 more seconds. If anybody has any questions, go ahead. If not, no problem at all, and we can move on to the next part of this presentation. All right, so I don't see any questions at all. So I actually have to throw up a couple polls. All right, please get involved with these and answer them. These kind of help me understand how useful this was. Did you guys enjoy it? What did you enjoy? What did you not enjoy? Right? So go ahead, please, and give the feedback, and we will get out of here as soon as possible. All right, I'll give about 10 more seconds if anyone hasn't done it, and then that's about it. All right. All right, I'm going to switch the polls. There's just one more poll I'll have to throw up, and then we can almost be done. All right, so here's one more that is up. All right, so the poll is up, guys. Go ahead and fill that out for me. Thank you so much. It shows me just, was this topic very good? Did you guys enjoy it? Would there be something that you would like to do similar to this in the future, right? So, fill it out. For anyone who hasn't, I'll give about 5 to 10 more seconds, and then we can wrap up this presentation. All right. Thank you guys so much for filling out that poll. I greatly appreciate your help. All right. So we are about to end. So please follow Tutlo on Facebook, LinkedIn, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Keep in touch with the English community. Maybe you can meet new people. Maybe you can learn something a learning strategy or something you did not know. There is constantly benefits of being in touch with the English community. All right, so guys, we talked about how to write our stories. It was a great journey. We talked about all 5 major steps. I hope there was something beneficial in those steps, right? Because that's the whole point of these presentations. It's for you guys to learn something, and it's for you guys to have, let's say, a different understanding of how things work when it comes to English and how we approach things. Whether that is the same in your language, in your native language, or it's different, but now we know the English way of doing it, right? And we learned some capitalization rules and some grammar rules as well. So that's about it. So thank you guys so much for coming into this presentation. I really enjoyed this topic. I have a passion for writing, and writing, whether that's songs, music, stories, I enjoy it. But all of these steps that we learned are super beneficial to our writing journey. So, like I said, my name is Charles Theodore Monk. I am a Tutlo tutor, and I hope I get to interact with you guys again, whether that is through a presentation or through a class on Tutlo. I love doing these, and I love doing this. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. I hope you guys have a great weekend and have great holidays. Take care, and I hope to see you guys again soon. So, my name is Charles Theodore Monk, signing off, and I hope to get to see you guys again. Goodbye.